Hi, it's Steve here from Analytics in Action. What I want to do today is give you a demonstration of how to set up and configure a lookup transformation within SQL Server integration services. Okay, so what I'll do today, I'll talk about, I suppose as an overview or an outline, I'm going to talk about the objective of this video, then talk about the considerations when using a lookup transformation, the 5 basic steps to configure a simple lookup. Then I'll go through a live video demonstration of actually setting up a lookup, and then I will also, at the end, I'll wrap it up by talking about some additional resources where you can get, say, demo files to follow this demonstration through, and also just additional resources for business intelligence and SQL Server integration services. So the objective of this video is really to demonstrate how to configure a simple lookup transformation. So there are a huge number of settings within a lookup transformation, and there's a number of different some intricacies. But what I'll do is just show you how to do a fairly standard lookup. Hopefully I will aim to do another video in the near future on some of the more advanced components of the lookup transformation. So in this video tutorial, I'm going to link customer ID from an Excel dataset, so that's a master dataset, to a customer ID in the reference in a reference SQL table, and then return the region that the customer lives in from the reference table. So it's very much like say a VLOOKUP within Excel. What I'll also demonstrate is how to deal with mismatches between the master dataset and the reference table. So, for example, if a customer ID is in one dataset but not in the other, by default the transformation will normally fail. But what you want to do is we need to implement some configurations and settings to deal with that. So I'll talk about that as well. So let's talk about considerations when using a lookup transformation, because there actually are quite a few considerations. So first one is that the reference dataset can be an existing table or a view, which is also known as a query, or it can be a cache file. I'm not going to talk about cache files today, because I think they'll probably best fall into the more advanced video demonstration I'm planning to do in the future. As I mentioned before, if there's no matching record between the reference data set and the master data set, an error is produced. So what we need to do is then configure the transformation to redirect rows to an error output, so you can actually capture the mismatches between the two data sets. So another couple of important considerations too. If there are multiple matches in the reference data set to the master data set, say if there are customer ID has 2 cities linked to it, the lookup transformation will pull back the first city. So that's important to know. Also, that if you are matching on, say, a text or a string field, the case, so the capitalization needs to be the same between the master table and the reference table. Otherwise, it won't match it. Also, white space, or also known as padding, is an issue. So if there is white space around around a text field, you need to remove that with a trim function. Okay, so as I mentioned before, a lookup transformation is very similar to a VLOOKUP, but it's also very similar to a merge join transformation within integration services. The key thing is that a lookup is much more efficient, particularly when you're dealing with really, really large files, so hundreds of thousands to millions of rows of data. A lookup transformation is going to be a lot quicker and a lot more efficient, because it's not what you call fully locking like a merge join is. So it may be that a merge join won't work on very large data sets, but a lookup transformation will be very, very quick. So it definitely helps with the performance of a package. Also, last point is that lookups don't work for some data types, such as, not surprisingly, things like images and certain text types, but a lot of things like strings are fine. So in terms of the basic sort of steps to configure a lookup transformation, you need to select the connection manager that you want to use. That'll basically enable you to connect to say the SQL database, which holds the reference data set. So in our case, we're going to have an OLDB connection, which is the sort of standard connection to a SQL database. You need to specify the table or the view which contains the reference data set, and then generate a reference data set by specifying a SQL statement. Because what happens is that reference tables can be quite big. It may be that you only want to pull back one column of data, such as the city or region in which the customer lives, but there may be 10, 20, 30 columns of data that don't apply, so things like region IDs or the segmentation of the customer. So what you can do is generate a little bit of SQL code. You can do that by just through the graphical user interface of the query designer. So that's no big deal at all if you're not a SQL coder. And yes, so specify which columns you want to pull back and match to the master data set. And then the final step is, the second to last step is specify the joins between the input and reference data set. So in this case, we're going to join on the customer ID, unique customer ID. And the final step is to add the columns from the reference data set and lookup transformation output. So in this case, it's going to be the region in which the customer lives. So what I'll do now is go on and show you how to configure this in a live demo. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just quickly show you the two data sources. So I've got an Excel file, which is really the master data set. So it has customer ID information and sum of charge information. And this customer ID information within Excel, if we look at the formatting, we'll see it is it's actually in a numeric format. So that is the master data set we're going to pull in. Then we've also got information sitting in SQL, sitting in with this lookup reference data set. And what the customer ID is in a varchar format, so it's essentially a text format, and the data looks like this. So I'm just going to select the top 1,000 rows. So we've got the customer ID and we've got the region there, and essentially what we're going to do is look up the customer ID from the master data set and look it up in this lookup, or also known as a reference data set. Okay, now for the live demo, what I've got here is Business Intelligence Development Studio, and I'm going to make the assumption, since you are watching this video on lookups, that you actually know the basics of building a package. So what we have here is a Excel connection. This connection goes through to the master file, that contains the customer IDs and the charges associated with that customer. And what I've actually done here is, because it's an Excel file, those customer IDs are formatted as in a numeric format. So what I'm actually done, I've just put in a data conversion here that's converting it to a string data type, and the output is going to be the customer ID string. So that's just the basics there. So really the only thing we need to do now is actually connect up the lookup transformation. So it's down on the side here. Drag it in. Connect to the lookup. Double click on it. So what we've got options to for cache mode. So basically this means, the cache mode means that the table, the lookup table, is stored in memory. So there, if it's in full cache, it has the potential to be a lot quicker as opposed to reading it off the disk every time you run the package. However, you do need to have enough RAM to actually store the reference table in memory. So what we're going to do is, the connection type is an OLDB connection manager because we're going to connect to a SQL database. And also this last setting down here is specify how to handle rows with no matching columns. So I talked about this in the actual earlier part of the presentation. If you leave this as file component, if you get a mismatch between the reference table and the master table, the whole thing will just fail and no outputs will produce. So what we want to do, we can either ignore the failure, which in some cases you may want to do, but what I want to do is redirect rows to a no match output. That means we can actually view the rows which mismatch, which don't match. So in terms of connection, I'll need a new connection manager. So this is the connection to the SQL database. So just click new, okay. The server name. This will be specific to your operating environment. In my case, the default is called named instance. The database name is something like lookup reference. Then we can test that connection. Connection's fine. Now go OK. Now we need to look at got the option to select the table within that database that holds the reference information. And then we've also got the option to build a select query to take a subset of that table. In our case, here we go, I'm just going to click Add Table, the top here, top right. So I'm going to add the table. So this is this query builder is really handy. It generates a SQL code for you, so it's all drag and drop, which is nice. In this case, I'm just going to actually retrieve all of the columns of data. In cases where you've got 20 or 30 columns of data and most of them aren't useful, this is where you can actually say, don't take these columns through and don't match them to the master data set. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. You can preview it. Yeah, that looks good. So it's got the customer ID, it's got the region. So we successfully defined the data within the sort of that lookup data set columns. Now what we have to do is define what is the link between the two data sets. So as I mentioned before, the original customer ID doesn't link to the customer ID because Excel actually turned it into a numeric data type. So that's what this error message is saying here. So what I did was convert it to a string, and that matches the string format in the lookup data set. So I've got a match there, and what we're going to do is say we're going to pull region information into the match it against the master data set. So this is all doesn't apply, so we just click OK. So hopefully that should do the trick. So what I'm going to do now to view the data, I'm going to drag derived column on and hang a data viewer between the lookup and the derived column. This just allows me to view the output of the lookup. Lookup match output, yeah, that's right. This just allows me to view the output without actually exporting the data outside of integration services. So I'm just going to add a data viewer. Okay. So just let this run. Should just take a second. Here we go. So we've successfully looked up the data. So we've got the customer ID, sum of charge from the master data set, and we've got the customer ID, the sum of charge, and the customer ID string from the master data set. We've pulled through regional information for all 231 records in the lookup sort of reference data set. So that all looks pretty good, but quite often what you'll get is situations where we don't get a match. So it's important to actually configure what to do when you get errors. So what I'll do is demonstrate the concept. So what we've got is the lookup no match output going across to this other derived column. Just going to add another data viewer there. So when we run this at the moment, since we're not getting any errors, we're not going to get anything popping in that second data viewer. There we go. Okay, so only one data viewer popped, which means all the data came down through the was matched successfully. But I'll just show you what would happen if we had a mismatch. So I'm just going to go back into the master data set, so see if I can actually find this. Where is it? Okay, lookup. Right, so I'm going to just basically create a row which doesn't match the reference sort of lookup table, which that's sitting in SQL Server. Okay, so I'll just pick the first row and stick a 1 in front. There we go. Close that down. Now we'll run the package again, and in theory that one record should be redirected out to this side, to the lookup with no match in the output. There we go. Set that running. The first data viewer will pop with hopefully 230 records, and then the second data viewer should pop with 1 record in it. My PC is just a little bit slow. Here we go. So what we've seen here, the first data viewer is popped with 230 records, and the second data viewer is popped. So these are the records where there's no match. So you can use this process to identify basically mismatches between, I suppose, cases where there's no matching data in the reference or lookup data set. So there you go. That is the basics of a lookup transformation within integration services. So I hope you found this tutorial on lookup transformations within SQL Server integration services useful. If you found it useful, I'd recommend perhaps subscribing to the YouTube channel. So you just click this little subscribe button above the video, and you'll get notified when further videos come out. I try and produce videos every, say, couple of weeks. So yeah, so that's a good option. Also, the other one is to actually come across to my website, analyticsinAction.com, and have a look at some of the videos on the site. I've got them grouped by categories. So, for example, data integration, I've got stacks and stacks of videos on integration services, from the very, very basics through to some of the more advanced things about like using variables, But lots and lots of information about the basic building blocks that you need to learn to become proficient with integration services. So definitely recommend coming across and taking a look. It's not all just about data integration either. I've got lots of other stuff about predictive analytics, modelling, and just learning integration services in general.